When you come out and you say that your business model no longer works, does that mean that you no longer have a business? Well, these aren't necessarily my words. These are the words of Oliver Blumer, he is the CEO of the VW Group, so quite a big cheese in the automotive industry, and also the serving CEO of Porsche. And in a memo that was leaked by somebody internally at Porsche and sent to Bloomberg, he'd used the phrase, "Our business model, which has served us well for many decades, no longer works in its current form." This is a pretty big statement. Is it the end of Porsche? Well, no, I don't think so just yet, but CEOs often do this when they're greasing the skids, greasing the market up to receive some not so good news around how the year is shaping up, getting the street ready to take it on the chin, if you like. And yeah, it doesn't look like Porsche is off to a great start this year. Not a terrible start, but not a great start. We'll be looking at some of the numbers in more detail as we go through this video and try and understand and unpick just what is going on here. Well, the first thing we cannot ignore, of course, is the big elephant in the room. It's not really an elephant, it's 20 elephants. That is the batterification, the electrification of Porsche. They went really hard. But let's take a quick look at Lamborghini and Ferrari. Where are their electric efforts? Does anyone really care? No, I don't think they do. Ferrari is supposed to be releasing the Electrica, I think later this year, October timeframe. No one's really interested. And then of course Lamborghini with their Lanzador. Still no one cares, right? And that's out. That's 28, 29, I think we'll see that, because Lamborghini probably don't really care either. They're just doing these as a bit of lip service, I think, to keep the green agenda ticking over. But that's not what these companies are about. Nobody in those organizations want to make these cars. That is pretty much for sure. And equally, I don't think anyone wants to buy them. Take a look at this Google search trend for Ferrari, looking at their battery electric vehicle versus a traditional model here. Yeah, absolutely no comparison. But Porsche went really, really hard on batterification, right? They really went hard. There is no escaping it. But I have to give them their dues. They made a pretty good car with the Taycan. It drives fantastically. It's a lot of fun. And it's not done too badly. I kind of say that with a bit of a pinch of salt, because actually it's not that great in terms of how it's worked out for them. And the reason for this is purely the amount of recalls that thing has had to go through now. I mean, my own Taycan was in for a heater replacement twice, a battery recall, a battery module to be replaced, and a lot of other users as well have been affected. Also, is it a competitive platform compared to some of the competition out there? I don't think it is. The range is not as great, and equally, they have depreciated like a lead balloon. Okay, yes, it is a four-door family saloon, and four-door family saloons never hold their value very well, but this thing has taken depreciation to another level, and a lot of folk have been burnt and potentially put off. And then you've got the situation of market saturation and people just getting a bit bored or a bit jaded with their EVs and wanting to get back to combustion. You see Porsche potentially reaching a situation now where those who initially wanted to get on and try the Taycan, were excited by it, have done it, have got that t-shirt and want to move back, want to try something else again while they can. So potentially the demand for new Taycans will decrease significantly. So just what is going on right now? Well, how many cars per year do these manufacturers make? Well, Ferrari, I think, make about 13,000 a year. Lambo, maybe 10 to 11,000 a year. So really low volume. Porsche, yeah, they make over 300,000 vehicles in a year. So massive. They are a volume car producer. Of course, the bulk of that is taken up by the SUV platforms. You've got the Macan and the Cayenne. So that is where the bulk of those numbers go. And they sell an awful lot of those. They've been a big success. And of course, 911 and the Caymans and Boxsters that they also shift a lot of. Taycans, they sold about 150,000 of those. So that is, again, is not an insignificant number. But sales figures of that recently have fallen off a cliff, and a lot of people holding back, and a lot of incentives that have been taken off the plate to buy those as well. So really a double whammy of affecting people's ability to, or desire to, want to buy those cars. Here's the bit that is important, and we're talking here about operating margin. That is how profitable car companies are. So Porsche is still very, very profitable. In 2023, they were operating at about 18% margin, which is very, very healthy for an automotive manufacturer. Ferrari, on the other hand, they are really good, the most profitable car company, about 27%. I think Lambo probably between about 20 and 27. But here's where Porsche gets into a bit of a pickle. Those are 2023-ish numbers. 2024, they were down to 14%, and in Q1 of 2025, they were down to circa 8% profitability, 8% margin. That is a real downturn. Why is this? Why have they tanked so badly? They're still selling plenty of cars, at least that's what it looks like. Maybe sales figures slightly down on last year, the equivalent period, by about 5 to 6%, but they're still shifting a lot of cars, but that operating margin has taken a big hit. Why is this? Well, here is what I think is going on here. Of course, there is the massive R&D costs of creating these battery platforms, no escaping that. But I think the Taycan specifically, and all its woes, has cost Porsche an absolute fortune. A fortune in repair costs, a fortune in workshop time, a fortune in loan vehicles, a fortune in compensation, just a fortune. I think it's really hit their profitability because they've had to spend all this money to put right the wrongs with the Taycan and keep people happy, keep customer service ticking over. And then of course there's the massive depreciation hits that they've taken on PCPs. My own PCP is seeing Porsche take a hit of about £30,000. That is just a write-off cost. That comes straight off that operating margin, so a significant tanking of that margin. Still profitable, but not as profitable as they should be. How do they turn it around? How are they going to really get things back on track? Well, Oliver Blume has also said that they're going to be cutting about 3,900 jobs by 28-29. Also, 1.3 billion in short-term R&D investment has been promised to try and create new and exciting things. And they have explicitly said they are taking a reversal on having battery-only EV platforms. They're looking at icification, that is putting combustion engines back into these cars to keep them under appeal, to keep people excited. And you only need to look at the comment sections of many channels talking about Porsche EVs and forums to see the sentiment out there. So many people bemoaning Porsche for going so hard on EVs, alienating their customer base, really seeming like they're trying to shift away from the combustion engine platforms and leaving people thinking, what's going on here? When all those folk want is those combustion engines. The business model that served us so well for so many years is what Oliver Blume has said, right? That is the 911, that is the bread and butter, that is what people want. Combustion engines, flat six, that sound, the excitement. They cannot ignore that, and they should not ignore that. Absolutely. And I think what you'll see now is Porsche going quite hard on some interesting models, some limited edition GT models, no doubt, a 911 platform that they can sell for significant profit to try and claw some of that back. And this is what manufacturers do when they want to get some higher margin models or really claw back some of that profitability. You saw it with McLaren, the likes of the Alva, for example. You know, these sort of 2 million models that they sell for massive profit just to get some good money back into the coffers. And I think you'll start to see that with some pretty unique unicorn 911 models potentially as we go forward. The other bit here as well is they're hybridizing their current 911 base, right? We've seen it with the GTS. We're going to see it as well with the new 911 turbo platform. And again, this could spook those traditional customers a little bit as well, in that they might think, oh, you know, this isn't for me anymore, and sort of pull back a little bit. So is it game over for Porsche right now? Well, I absolutely do not think it is. They are going through a massive readjustment. I think they're going to take the reins in, take stock of what's going on, but the brand still has a lot of power. The other piece here as well is the competition that the electrification platforms are going to start to see. The likes of the competition that is coming inbound from China as we speak, right? We're going to start to see it on UK shores, for example, although no US production with Porsche, so tariffs, I think about 27% tariffs for importation of Porsches, making them more expensive, making them less desirable. But the import of the EVs into UK, the Chinese imports you're going to start to see with maybe twice the power for half the cost. If you just want a fast EV, what are you going to buy? A Taycan, or are you going to get one of those super fast, super cheap, super cheerful mobile phones on wheels? Yep, for me, it would probably be the latter, unfortunately. So the electric platforms that Porsche offers have to be more compelling. They have to be more competitive given the situation that they're in. I think China sales down for Porsche right now because there's so many viable alternatives, own brand alternatives in China that those consumers are just getting on board with. They don't need the Western imports anymore. So it is interesting times, it's tough times for Porsche. They're going to have to work hard to turn this one round, really focus on those combustion engines, maybe copy what their rivals are doing, Ferrari and Lamborghini, who, yeah, make a BEV, but they don't really. That's it for this one. Do stay safe, stay well. See you in the next one, and bye for now.